Lee Dae-ho walked through the long halls of the Galactic Military Academy. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth metal floor. Around him, students from many different worlds talked in groups. Some had blue skin, others had extra arms. A few looked like walking trees with leaves instead of hair. Dae-ho was used to being different here. He was human. Only 3 humans went to this school. Most other students came from alien worlds that had been part of the galaxy community for hundreds of years. Humans had only joined 50 years ago. The academy sat on Nexus Prime, a planet that belonged to no one species. It was neutral ground. Here young aliens learned to become officers in the United Species Defense Force. The best students from every world came here. Dae-ho still could not believe he had made it in . He entered his morning class and took his usual seat in the back row. The classroom was big and round. Seats went up in circles like a bowl turned upside down. This way, everyone could see the teacher in the center. Other students filled in around him. There was Yoon Ji-won, a Quarren student who looked like she was made of living crystal. Her body gave off a soft blue light. She always sat near the humans and tried to be friendly. Most other students stayed away from them. Behind Dae-ho sat his 2 human classmates. Park Min-ho was tall and thin. He had dark hair and always looked like he was thinking about something funny. Kim So-ra was shorter with bright eyes that missed nothing. She wrote notes about everything she saw. The 3 humans had become friends. Quickly. They were the only ones of their kind here. Other species had groups of 10 or 20 students. Humans had 3. The teacher walked in. Professor Kelthera was a Veltar. Her species looked like giant insects that walked on 2 legs. She had 6 arms and hard shell-like skin. Her eyes were made of many small parts that could see in all directions at once. 2 long things that looked like thin fingers stuck out from her head. They moved all the time, feeling the air. "Good morning, class," she said. Her voice was sharp and clear. "Today we will study something very important for future officers. We will learn about fear." The students became quiet. Fear was not a fun topic, but it was important for soldiers to understand. Professor Kelthera walked to the center of the room. "Fear is a tool," she said. "It can be used as a weapon. It can also be used to control others. Every species in our galaxy has things that make them afraid. Smart officers know these things." She touched a control panel that came up from the floor. A big screen appeared in the air above her head. Pictures of different creatures started to show. "Every world has predators," she continued. "These are animals that hunt and kill other animals. Over millions of years, prey animals learned to fear certain sounds. These sounds meant danger. They meant death." The first picture showed a creature from the Veltar homeworld. It looked like Professor Kelthera, but much bigger and with more teeth. Sharp claws came from its 6 arms. "This is a Veltar queen," she said. "They hunt alone. They are silent until they are ready to kill. Then, they make a sound that freezes all prey in place." Several Veltar students in the class moved in their seats. Even looking at the picture made them uncomfortable. More pictures followed. There was something that looked like a huge worm with no eyes but many mouths full of teeth. Another creature looked like a bird made of metal with wings that could cut through rock. Each picture made different groups of students look worried. Dae-ho watched his classmates. The crystal students became dimmer when they saw predators from their world. Students with fur began to smell different. A scared smell. Those with feathers made them stand up straight. But Dae-ho felt nothing like that. The creatures looked interesting. Some were beautiful in a strange way. He wondered how they moved and what they ate. He did not feel the need to run or hide. Today's lesson is about psychological warfare, Professor Kelthera said. This means using fear to win battles before they start. If you can make your enemy too scared to fight, you have already won. She looked around the room with her many-part eyes. I will play sounds from different predators. You will hear what your ancestors heard when they were in danger. Watch how your body reacts. A good officer knows their own fears. The room became very quiet. Students looked nervous. Some moved closer together in groups. Others sat up straight, like they were getting ready to run. Dae-Ho noticed that Minho and Sora did not look scared either. Minho was leaning forward like he was excited. Sora had her notebook ready to write things down. Professor Kelthera's finger things moved over. The controls. "We will start with sounds from my homeworld," she said. "Remember, this is just a recording. You are safe here." But even as she said this, many students did not look like they felt safe at all. The teacher looked at the human students in the back row. Her many eyes focused on them. "This will be very educational," she said. "Every species reacts to these sounds. It is built into their bodies by millions of years of evolution." Dae-Ho smiled a little. He was curious to hear what sounds could make entire species afraid. On Earth, his people had stories about monsters and dangerous animals. But they were just stories now. Most of the dangerous things from Earth's past were gone. The lights in the room became dim. Professor Kelthera's claw moved to the first button on her control panel. "Let us begin," she said. The first sound filled the classroom like a wave of ice water. It was deep and hollow, like wind blowing through a cave full of bones. But there was something else in it, something that made it feel alive and hungry. Every Veltar student in the room froze. Their 6 arms locked in place. Their shell-like skin turned darker. One student near the front fell off his chair and stayed on the floor, not moving. "The hunting call of the Veltar Queen," Professor Kelthera said. Her own voice was shaking a little. "This sound means death to all smaller creatures on our world. When they hear it, they cannot move. They can only wait." Dae-Ho watched the frozen Veltar students. It was like someone had turned them into statues. Their eyes still moved, but the rest of their bodies would not obey them. Fear had taken control. The teacher pressed another button. This time, the sound was different. It started so low that Dae-Ho could feel it in his bones more than hear it. Then it got louder and higher. It sounded like the earth itself was screaming. The crystal students dimmed until they were almost invisible. Yoonji-won, who usually glowed bright blue, became so dark that Dae-Ho could barely see her. She was shaking, and small pieces of crystal were falling from her body like tears. "Titan worm from Goreth," the professor said. "They live deep under the gas giant's surface. This sound travels through rock and metal. When crystal beings hear it, they know something big enough to eat a whole city is coming." More sounds followed. Each one was worse than the last. There was the shriek of something that hunted in deep space, a sound that made the fish-like students curl up in balls and cover their gills. The roar of a sky predator made all the bird-like students try to hide under their desks. With each sound, Dae-Ho watched his classmates fall apart with fear. Some cried, others shook so hard they could not control it. A few made small, scared sounds in their throats. But the 3 humans sat quietly in the back row. Dae-Ho found the sounds interesting. They were complex and layered. He could tell that each species had evolved to make sounds that would terrify their prey in specific ways. Min-Ho was taking notes about the different frequencies and patterns. Sora was watching the other students' reactions and writing about those too. Professor Kelthera noticed this. Her many eyes turned to look at the humans. "Interesting," she said. "The human students show no response." She paused the demonstration. Many students looked relieved. Some were still shaking. Others were slowly returning to their normal colors. "Perhaps," the professor said, "our human friends need something more familiar, something from their own world." She touched her controls and brought up a new screen. This one showed Earth. The blue and green planet looked peaceful and beautiful from space, but the professor zoomed in to show forests and grasslands. "Earth," she said to the class. "A death world. The humans come from a place where almost everything tries to kill everything else. Surely they will understand fear when they hear sounds from their own predators." Some students looked at the humans with new interest. A death world meant a place where life was hard and dangerous. Most species came from safer worlds where predators were few. The professor found Earth's biological database in the school's computer system. "Let us see what monsters the humans grew up with," she said. Dae-Ho felt a little excited. He wondered what sounds she would play. Earth had many interesting animals, both living and extinct. The teacher scrolled through files of Earth creatures. She stopped at one that made her finger things move quickly with excitement. Perfect, she said. This should do it. On the screen appeared a picture of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It was huge, with teeth as long as Daeho's arm. Its small arms looked funny, but its massive head and powerful legs were clearly built for killing. This creature lived on Earth millions of years ago, Professor Kelthera announced. It was one of the most dangerous predators ever to walk on land. 40 feet long, 7 tons of pure killing machine. Students who had been recovering from the earlier sounds now looked worried again. If this monster had lived on the human homeworld, what kind of sounds would it make? The Tyrannosaurus Rex, the professor said, her voice full of drama. Let us hear the sound that ruled Earth for millions of years. She pressed the button. The classroom filled with a roar that seemed to shake the walls. It was deep and powerful and angry. It was the sound of something so big and strong that nothing could stand against it. Around the room, alien students reacted with terror. Several fainted completely. Others hid under their desks. The crystal students went completely dark. The bird-like students tried to fly away but hit the ceiling. In all the chaos and fear, something strange happened in the back row. Lee Daeho smiled. It was not a nervous smile or a scared smile. It was a real happy smile. Like he had just heard something wonderful. Professor Kelthera saw this and stopped the sound. Explain, she demanded. This is the roar of your apex predator. This sound should make you want to run and hide. Daeho was still smiling. It's a nice roar, he said simply. Very impressive. The teacher's many eyes focused on him. Nice, she repeated. This creature could eat you in one bite. Could have, Daeho corrected gently. But they're all gone now. We have their bones in museums. Children visit them on school trips. Professor Kelthera did not understand. Gone? What do you mean gone? Minho spoke up from behind Daeho. Extinct. Dead. All of them. They died out 65 million years ago. But how did your species survive such monsters? Asked Yoon Ji-won, her crystal body still dim with fear. So-Ra answered this time. We didn't have to. We came along much later. By the time humans evolved, the really big predators were already gone. The professor looked confused. Then what predators did your species face? What sounds make humans afraid? The 3 humans looked at each other. Minho was trying not to laugh. Sora had a strange expression on her face. Daeho's smile got even bigger. Would you like to hear them? He asked. Professor Kelthera looked at the human students with growing curiosity. Her finger things moved quickly as she searched through Earth's animal database. Very well, she said. Let us hear what makes humans afraid. She found a file marked Current Earth Predators and selected the first entry. A picture appeared on the screen showing a massive brown bear standing on its back legs. It was 8 feet tall with claws like knives and teeth meant for tearing meat. Ursus arctos, she read from the file. Brown bear, one of Earth's current apex predators, weighs up to 800 pounds, can run 35 miles per hour, kills with crushing bites and claw strikes. Students around the room looked at the image with horror. Even after hearing the T-Rex roar, this living predator seemed more real and frightening. The professor played the sound file. A deep, angry roar filled the classroom. It was the sound of rage and power, of something that would not back down from any fight. It echoed off the walls like thunder. Several students who had just recovered from the earlier sounds immediately fainted again. Others covered their ears and made whimpering noises. But in the back row, Kim So-ra made a soft "aw" sound, like she thought the bear was cute. Professor Kelthera's many eyes turned to stare at her. Did you find that endearing? So-ra nodded. Bears are wonderful. Very smart animals. In some parts of Earth, people go to special places just to watch them catch fish. Watch them? The professor's voice went higher with disbelief. Humans voluntarily go near these killing machines? Oh yes, Minho said. Bear watching is very popular. People pay money to do it. The teacher quickly selected another file. This one showed a pack of gray wolves running through snow. Their yellow eyes gleamed with intelligence and hunger. Pack hunters, she announced. Canis lupus. They work together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Listen to their hunting call. The sound of howling wolves filled the room. It was haunting and wild, the sound of the hunt under a full moon. One voice started, then others joined in, creating a symphony of predatory intent that had terrified human ancestors for thousands of years. This time, even more students collapsed. The sound seemed to reach into some deep part of their minds and tell them that death was coming in the darkness. Park Min-ho actually chuckled. The professor stopped the recording and stared at him. You find this amusing? Sorry, Min-ho said, still grinning. It's just, that's not really a scary sound to us. It's more like nostalgic. Nostalgic? Professor Kelthara repeated the word like it hurt her to say it. Wolves don't hunt humans anymore, Sora explained. We domesticated them thousands of years ago. Now we call them dogs. They live in our houses and sleep on our beds. The classroom went completely silent. Students stared at the humans in shock. Yoon Ji-won's crystal body flickered with confused patterns of light. You domesticated? You're predators? The professor asked slowly. The ones we could, Daeho said. The useful ones. Professor Kelthara's finger things moved frantically over her controls. She brought up image after image of Earth's predators. Lions with their terrible roars, tigers stalking through tall grass, sharks with rows of razor teeth. She played their sounds one by one. The lion's roar that could be heard 5 miles away, the tiger's chuff that meant it was ready to pounce, the splash of a great white shark breaching the water to catch its prey. Each sound sent waves of terror through the alien students. Some had stopped trying to stay conscious and just lay on the floor, overwhelmed by the parade of auditory nightmares. But the humans reacted differently to each one. When the lion roared, Sora said, "The king of beasts, beautiful animals. Sadly, there aren't many left in the wild." When the tiger's hunting sound played, Minho mentioned, "My grandmother had a picture of one in her house. They're very respected in human culture." When the shark sounds echoed through the room, Daeho actually looked excited. "I've always wanted to go shark diving," he said. "They're such perfect predators, amazing creatures." Professor Kelthara was beginning to look desperate. She scrolled through more files, looking for something that would finally break through the humans' strange calm. She found recordings of extinct predators that had lived alongside early humans. Cave lions that were larger than modern lions, short-faced bears that stood 12 feet tall, dire wolves with jaws strong enough to crush bones. She played them all. Roars and howls and snarls that had once sent human ancestors running for their lives, sounds that were coded into human DNA as signals of mortal danger. The alien students were beyond terror now. Many had simply shut down completely, their minds unable to process any more fear. Others rocked back and forth, making small crying sounds. But the 3 humans just listened with interest. Sometimes they made comments about which sounds were more complex or interesting than others. Finally, Professor Kelthara played one last recording. It was a sound that had been reconstructed from fossil evidence and computer models. The hunting scream of a pack of velociraptors, the smart, fast pack hunters that had terrorized Earth millions of years ago. The sound was like nothing else. Sharp, intelligent, coordinated. It was the sound of cunning predators working together, talking to each other as they closed in for the kill. This time, Kim Sora actually giggled. "Oh, that's like the raptors in Jurassic Park," she said happily. "Children on Earth love those movies. Very popular." Professor Kelthara shut off the sound system and stood in the middle of the classroom, surrounded by unconscious and terrified students. Only the 3 humans sat calmly in their seats, looking perfectly normal. "I don't understand," she said, her voice small and confused. "These are sounds of death. These are the voices of your nightmares." Every species fears the sounds of their predators. It is written in their genes by millions of years of evolution. Deho looked at his two friends, then back at the professor. "Can we ask you something?" She nodded, too confused to speak. "What do you do with your predators?" he asked. "On your world, when you encounter the creatures that hunt your people?" "We run," she said immediately. "We hide. We avoid them. If we must fight them, we do it from far away with weapons. We certainly don't go near them by choice." The three humans exchanged looks again. Minho was trying very hard not to smile. Sora was taking notes about the professor's reaction. Deho nodded like this explained everything. "That's the difference," he said gently. Professor Kelthera stood in the center of the classroom, surrounded by her terrified and unconscious students. Only the three humans remained calm and alert. She looked at them with all of her many eyes focused together. "Explain," she said. It was not a request. It was a demand from someone who needed to understand something that made no sense to her. Dotli Deho stood up slowly. Around him, alien students were starting to wake up and look around in confusion. The sounds had stopped, but the fear still hung in the air like smoke. "Professor," Deho said in his quiet voice, "I think you're looking at this wrong. Yes, those were predators from our world, but we didn't just survive them." He paused and looked around the room at the recovering students. Some were still shaking. Others were helping their friends sit up. "We won," he said simply. "Won?" Professor Kelthera's finger things moved rapidly. "What do you mean, won?" Minho stood up next to his friend. "That T-Rex roar you played first, the one that made everyone so scared?" He smiled. "We turned those into tourist attractions. Humans pay money to see their skeletons in museums. Children have toys that look like them. We made movies about them for entertainment." The professor's shell-like skin began to change color slightly. This was a sign of deep confusion in her species. But they were apex predators," she said. "The dominant killers of your world." "Were," Sora said, standing up with her notebook in hand. "Past tense. They're extinct. Gone. Dead for 65 million years before humans even evolved." "What about the living predators?" asked a weak voice from the front of the room. It was one of the Veltar students who had just woken up. "The bears and wolves and lions." Deho looked at the student with kind eyes. "What about them?" "They still exist. They still hunt. They still kill." "Some do," Deho agreed. "But not many, and not us." He walked down from his seat toward the center of the room. Students moved away from him, but not because they were afraid of him. They were afraid of what he represented, something they didn't understand. "Those wolves you played," Deho continued. "Their howling that terrified everyone, we heard those sounds for thousands of years, and yes, at first we were afraid, but then we did something different." "Different how?" Professor Kelthera asked. "We didn't just run away and hide," Minho said. "We studied them. We learned about them. We figured out how they thought and what they wanted. And then," Sora added, "we took their babies." The classroom went very quiet. Even the students who were still recovering from their fear stopped moving. "You took their babies?" Yoonjiwon asked in a whisper. Her crystal body was slowly getting brighter as she felt safer, but now it dimmed again. "Wolf pups," Sora explained. "We raised them with human children, fed them, cared for them, taught them that humans were their pack. Over many generations," Deho continued, "we changed them. We made them smaller, friendlier, more useful to us. We turned wolves into dogs." Professor Kelthera's many eyes went wide. You took your predators and made them into pets." "Dogs aren't pets," Minho said. "They're partners. They help us hunt. They guard our homes. They guide blind humans and help find people who are lost. Some dogs help solve crimes by smelling things humans cannot. And they love us for it," Sora added. Dogs would die to protect humans. We turned our predators into our most loyal friends. A student near the back raised a shaking hand. It was Tal Corvin, a member of a large predatory species that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. What about the predators you couldn't domesticate? He asked. The dangerous ones. The three humans looked at each other. Daeho's smile became a little wider. We ate them, he said. The silence that followed was so complete that Daeho could hear the air recycling system in the walls. Ate them? Professor Kelthera's voice was barely a whisper. Shark fin soup, Minho said casually. Bear steaks, venison from deer, though deer aren't really predators, they're just good eating. Lion meat is considered a delicacy in some places, Sora added, reading from her notes. Though it's rare now because there aren't many lions left. Not many left because, Tal Corvin asked, though he looked like he didn't want to know the answer. Because we killed most of them, Daeho said matter-of-factly. The ones that were dangerous to humans anyway. We kept some alive in protected areas and zoos so our children can see what they look like. Professor Kelthera sat down heavily in her teacher's chair. Her 6 arms hung limply at her sides. Let me understand this correctly, she said slowly. Your species encountered apex predators, and instead of developing better ways to hide or run away, you decided to fight them, domesticate them, or eat them. That's a pretty good summary, Minho agreed. What about fear? She asked. What about the natural response to run from things that can kill you? Daeho thought about this for a moment. We do have fear, he said. But I think we use it differently than other species. How so? When we get scared, we get curious. We want to understand what scared us. We want to figure out how to make it not scary anymore. Sora nodded. Fear makes us think. It makes us ask questions like, how does this thing hunt? And what does it need to survive? And how can we use this? Use it? Yunjiwan asked. Everything has a use, Minho explained. Wolves became dogs. Wild horses became transportation. Wild cattle became food and leather. Even things that seemed useless, we found ways to make them useful. And if we couldn't make them useful, Daeho added, and if they were dangerous, to us, then we eliminated them. Professor Kelthera looked around her classroom at the faces of her students. They were all staring at the 3 humans with expressions of awe, terror, and confusion. The sounds I played, she said quietly, the roars and howls and screams. You smiled at them because they're the sounds of victory, Daeho said. Every one of those sounds represents a challenge that our species met and overcame. We don't hear predator calls as threats. He paused and looked directly at the professor. We hear them as invitations. The classroom was so quiet that everyone could hear their own breathing. Professor Kelthera sat in her chair, looking at the 3 human students like she was seeing them for the first time. Around the room, alien students stared with wide eyes and open mouths. Invitations, the professor repeated slowly. You hear predator sounds as invitations. Invitations to solve problems, Daeho explained. Every predator sound tells us something. It tells us what the creature wants, how it hunts, what it fears. Once we understand those things, we can figure out how to deal with it. Yoonji-won's crystal body flickered with nervous light. But what if you can't figure it out? What if the predator is too strong or too smart? Minho grinned. Then we get better tools. Tools? Asked Tal Corvin, the large predatory student. Spears, arrows, traps, guns, vehicles. Whatever we need, Sora said, still taking notes. If a predator is faster than us, we build something faster. If it's stronger than us, we build something stronger. If it's smarter than us, we work together until we're smarter than it. Daeho finished. Professor Kelthera's finger things moved rapidly as she processed this information. This is why humans rose so quickly in galactic society, she said, more to herself than to the students. We thought you were just lucky. We thought you were a weak species that happened to develop space travel before your predators could kill you all. We did develop space travel, Minho agreed. But not to escape our predators. We developed it because we ran out of challenges on our own planet. The professor's many eyes went wide. Ran out of challenges? Well, Deho said thoughtfully, we had domesticated or eliminated most of the dangerous animals. We had figured out how to grow food reliably. We had built cities and governments and art and music. We were getting a little bored. Bored? Professor Kelthera repeated. Your species conquered your entire world and then got bored. Space seemed like the next logical step, Sora said. New places to explore, new problems to solve, maybe new predators to figure out. At this, several students made small, frightened sounds. The classroom door opened, and Captain Nam Soo-jin walked in. She was the human military liaison assigned to the academy. She wore the blue uniform of the United Species Defense Force with the rank insignia of a full captain. She was older than the students, maybe 30 years old, with short black hair and calm, intelligent eyes. Professor Kelthera, she said with a polite bow. I apologize for interrupting your class. I was walking past and heard some unusual sounds. Is everything all right? The professor looked around her classroom. Half her students were still on the floor, recovering from terror-induced fainting. The other half were staring at the human students like they were dangerous wild animals. Only, the three humans looked normal and relaxed. Captain Nam, she said weakly. We were having a lesson about predator psychology. Captain Nam looked around the room and seemed to understand the situation immediately. I see. And how did the lesson go? Educational, Deho said with a small smile. Captain Nam nodded. I imagine it was. She looked at Professor Kelthera. Professor, might I speak with you privately for a moment? The two of them walked to the far corner of the classroom. Deho could see them talking quietly, but he couldn't hear what they were saying. The captain's expression was serious, but not angry. The professor's finger things moved constantly as she spoke. While they talked, the alien students began to whisper among themselves. Deho caught fragments of their conversations. Did you hear what they said about eating predators? They turned wolves into pets, wolves! No wonder humans volunteer for the dangerous missions. I heard a human once arm wrestled a Gorgon battle beast and won. My cousin works on a human ship. He says they get excited when the ship's alarms go off. Captain Nam finished her conversation with the professor and walked over to the three human students. Cadets, she said formally. How are you adjusting to life at the academy? Very well, Captain, all three replied together. Good. She looked at them with knowing eyes. I trust you're learning a lot about galactic culture? Yes, ma'am, Sora said. It's fascinating how different species approach problems. Indeed it is. The captain's expression softened slightly. Try to remember that not everyone shares humanity's enthusiastic approach to challenges. Some species prefer caution and careful planning. We understand, Captain, Deho said. We're trying to be sensitive to cultural differences. Captain Nam nodded and addressed the whole class. Students, I want you to remember something important. Every species in our galaxy has strengths and weaknesses. Humans have their own strengths, just as your species have theirs. The key to successful cooperation is understanding and respecting those differences. She paused and looked directly at the alien students. Humans may seem strange to you. They may react differently than you expect, but they are your allies and your fellow officers. Judge them by their actions, not by your fears. With that, she left the classroom. The students watched her go, then turned their attention back to the three humans. Professor Kelthera returned to the center of the room. She looked tired but more composed than before. Class, she said, today's lesson has been very enlightening. We have learned that different species have very different relationships with fear and danger. She looked at her alien students. We have also learned that our assumptions about other species can be wrong. Very wrong. Then she looked at the human students. And we have learned that there are many ways to respond to threats. Humans chose a path that most species would consider impossible or insane. Is it wrong? Asked Yoon Ji-won quietly. Professor. Kelthera considered this carefully. Different. Not wrong, just different, and perhaps, she paused, perhaps more effective than we realized. The class ended a few minutes later. As students filed out, they gave the humans a wide berth, but Daeho noticed that their expressions had changed. Instead of dismissive curiosity, he saw something closer to respectful wariness. Yoon Ji-won stopped beside Daeho's desk as he packed his things. Can I ask you something? She said softly. Of course. When you hear those sounds, the roars and howls, what do you really think about? Daeho thought for a moment. I think about the animals that made them. I wonder what their lives were like. I wonder what problems they faced and how they solved them. I think about the humans who first heard those sounds and decided not to run away. And that doesn't scare you? Daeho smiled. It makes me proud. Every one of those sounds is proof that my ancestors were braver and smarter and more determined than the things that wanted to eat them. Yoon Ji-won's crystal body flickered with thoughtful patterns. Humans really are different from us. Yes, Daeho agreed. But that's what makes working together interesting. As the three humans walked out of the classroom, they could hear whispers following them down the hallway. They smiled at the sounds of their predators. What do they do when they meet our predators? No wonder they volunteer for the dangerous missions. Minho chuckled quietly. I think we may have changed some opinions today. Good, So-ra said, still writing in her notebook. Understanding leads to better cooperation. Daeho nodded, but he was thinking about something Captain Nam had said. She had mentioned that humans get excited when alarms go off. He realized she was right. When other species heard warning sounds, they felt fear. When humans heard them, they felt curiosity and anticipation. Maybe that really was the difference. Other species heard danger and thought about escape. Humans heard danger and thought about solutions. As they walked toward their next class, Daeho wondered what new challenges the galaxy might offer. Whatever they were, he was looking forward to meeting them.